I think I'm at about the stage where I can take the existing leisure battery out, so I don't want anything feeding the 12 volt side of the leisure battery. So one thing is there's no isolator on the solar charge controller, but it's just plugged into this block 7 on the Electra block, which is it's kind of the additional charger input, but I'm just going to pull that out so that's not feeding through the Electra block. So now I can take the positive terminal off the existing leisure battery, and confusingly in this Burstner the positive connection is black and the negative connection is brown, which is, I find, deeply confusing. I'm just going to put some tape around that to, if you like, remind myself that black is positive. Remember that. So with the last retaining clamp out of place, I can now remove it from the vehicle. I've just dry fitted the battery, and that fits in there pretty well. There's plenty of space out the front for these terminals. They're not going to interfere with anything. I need to strap it down, and I probably need to put some self tappers through there to hold it down. But it looks like it's going to clear the seat base okay. The actual swivel seat is slightly raised up on this position here, so it looks like we're going to be good to go. Soldery workstation does a pretty good job of acting as a heat shrink gun. Why reinvent the wheel? Right, well, I've got all the major components in there. I've put a junction box on the negative just so that I can tap in to it within this side bench seat. This is the positive from the leisure battery going via the isolator via a 200 amp fuse down to the multi-plus, and then I've got the VE bus from the multi-plus. I've got a VE direct cable which comes from the solar charge controller, and I've got another CAN bus which is coming from the Fogstar battery, and then this that I've wired in, this is power for the Serbo GX. So I'm going to mount the Serbo GX here, but everything's screwed down. I've got mains at the moment. I've just got a single main socket on the outside here, and mains in is coming from the external hookup, the electric hookup. So I think I'm just about in the position to put the base back down one final time. Because I'm no longer running the Electra block, I've got no way of charging the engine battery when the engine's not running. So I've installed a battery master, which simply gets wired across the leisure and engine battery and earth. And what that does is, if the leisure battery exceeds the engine battery by, I think it's 0.7 of a volt, something like that, it will trickle some charge back into the engine battery. So if, for example, we're on electric hookup and we're charging the leisure battery, this will also put some charge back into the engine battery. And I prefer the idea of this to using the trickle charge output from the multi-plus, because the trickle charge output from the multi-plus is merely a low current copy of the voltage. So if you've got lithium leisure batteries and lead acid engine batteries, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to try and send a lithium profile to your engine batteries. So battery master, 80 quid, no, what was it, 69, something like that. Simple little box, wire it in parallel, job done. I've got my bus bars in there, and they're good and firm, which is rather nice. Just a couple of connections still to make up, seen from the other side, but they're in there good and solid. Right, I've got all the original connections and my new connections to the multi-plus all back up, and yeah, back as they were. I've reconnected that temperature probe on the negative terminal. I'm not sure how much good that will do now I'm on the lithium profiles, but anyway, for completeness, I've reconnected it. Okay, turn the battery on. All right. no magic smoke, so that's pretty good. Over this side I've got the isolator. Turn the isolator on. Click from the multi-plus, and hey, we have inverted mains coming out, and the Servo GX is starting to boot. So yeah, so far so good. There we are. Probably do a bit more neatening up, tidying up, but that's I've got the base back in the cupboard, so this is now usable as a bench seat. The multi-plus making the fans are on because it's charging, so it's taking about 1 kilowatt off the grid at the moment, and it because the battery as supplied was on about 46%, and it's now I don't know, 60-70%, something like that. It's recharging. It will be recharged fairly soon. So yep, so far so good, and I'll get the Servo GX hooked up to the internet. As luck would have it, I can easily reach the switch down here which turns the multi-plus on and off and switches it between inverter charger and charger only. We don't need it all the time, so I can turn it off there, which is quite handy for saving power, or with a flick of the finger turn it on. So to remind myself, I've just written on here sometime. This is the LA121545, which shout call a booster, but it's a battery to battery charger, and it's currently set for an AGM profile, and I want to change it to lithium. But so that we can see what's going on, I'm going to whip these connections out. This is the D plus connection from the alternator, the yellow wire, and these are the sensors from the leisure battery. This grey wire is that temperature sensor from the leisure battery. So I'll just whip those out. So there's a big button down here, and each time you press it, it will cycle through various settings. First one is the battery type, currently set to AGM. Then the charge reduction, currently set to C1, whatever that means. I'm not going to change it. And the third one is the maximum output current, and that's currently set to 45 amps, and I'm not going to change that either because I'm not certain of the cabling. But I need to change the battery type from AGM to lithium, and to do that there's a little hole down here, and you need a pokey stick of some sort. So you select the battery type, you poke in there and hold for up to 6 seconds until it flashes, and then you can cycle through the battery types. And I want lithium, and then hold again until it goes solid, and that's now set to lithium. And that's a constant voltage output, so it's a 14.4 volts, which is okay for fully charging the lithium leisure battery, but it's not good to keep it at that charge. So what I'm going to do is put a switch in line with this D plus signal, so that I can turn it off. So if we're doing a drive and the leisure battery is already fully charged, I can cut this D plus signal, and this will tell this unit that the alternator isn't running, and therefore it won't continue to charge the leisure battery. So that's the next thing to do. I've made up a small lead with a switch to interrupt the D plus line to the WA121545. Haven't decided where to mount it yet, but it's big enough to go anywhere in the plastic panels on the seat base. So I'll leave it loose for the time being, and decide where to mount it when I've got the seats back in, which I think I'm about ready to do. A friend gave me some of this rubber insulating mat, tested to 15,000 volts, so that should work at 12 volts okay. I'm just going to cut out some pieces of this and attach to the top of the battery and trap that beneath the seat base to give a bit of vibrational support and stop the battery moving around. The battery itself is strapped in both front to back and side to side, so it shouldn't move. I'm probably cut up some of this and wedge it down the side as well, just to make sure, absolutely sure, that the battery doesn't move. But now everything's rock solid, and there's plenty of clearance around the terminals and everything at the moment. So yeah, just about ready to start the big reassembly, put the seats back in, etc. Exciting times. Just to demonstrate the effect of the switch in the D plus line from the alternator. At the moment, there we're sitting idle. We're getting 7 watts of solar. It's a really overcast day, and there's nothing going into the battery, into the leisure battery. But if I turn this on, you can hear the engine note changes slightly, and now we're charging, and we're getting 600 watts into the leisure battery. So yeah, I think that's quite neat, and I can mount this somewhere where I can see it and see what we're doing. And there we are, all finished. The Multiplus is under the bench seat down here, the space above it still usable, all the seats back in, side panels back in, everything back as it was. And that switch in the D plus line I decided to mount on the side down there, where it's accessible, it's visible, but it's not likely to get kicked or knocked. So that's it for this stage. Next will be more solar panels on the roof and an additional MPPT solar charge controller, but that's a project for another day.